Hello guys and girls, welcome to a new Photoshop tutorial with PSD Box. I'm Andrei and this is the first tutorial of 2019. It's an advanced tutorial and I want to show you how I went from this image to this. So we have manipulation techniques here and also some makeup. I'm going to show you basic frequency separation, but I'm going to go really fast because I have all other tutorials explaining how the frequency separation works. What I really like to show you is how I made the makeup here and the retouch of the eyes. So the eyes themselves are really easy to make, but I'm going to show you a technique to create this makeup and make it look realistic. The edges here are not really that realistic, but I'm going to show you some techniques that I used to create that. And also how I changed the background without using any hair masking, just really simple techniques. I'm going to use 3 layers to create the hairs, the blur, and also the normal layer, okay? Then some details here. Actually, I'm going to go to the PSD file, to the original PSD file. You can see all the layers here. I have 3 layers for the model. Let me go to here. 3 layers for the model, a really simple background with 2 stock images and some adjustments, some particles there, which I'm not going to add on this tutorial, but you can download my dust particles pack from the resources.psdbox.com, which is my resources website. You can download it for free. This FX group is empty, so I'm going to delete it. Then I have the frequency separation here, some tones on the skin, which I'm not going to do on the tutorial because I'm going to show you how to work with this in Camera Raw before we start editing it. Then a couple of layers for the makeup. This is the technique that I want to show you. The white lines on the skin there. Making realistic makeup sometimes can be challenging because you cannot see the texture on the skin. I want to show you how you can achieve that. How to create more realistic makeup. Then some other adjustments. These are all the makeup on the eyes. Vegetation, which is on the foreground, just to create some depth of field. I just want to show you the eyes makeup, how I made this. Okay, this is all inside a single group. Then some color grading. Let me zoom out a little so you can see it better. Basic color grading, and then the final edits using Camera Raw or Lightroom, depending on what you prefer. So that's all for the intro. I hope you will like it, and let's get started. So let's get started. I'm going to open my stock folder. And here, let me see, inside the stock folder, you'll find all the images that I used to make this, except one of the background images, which right now is not here, but I'm going to put it inside. You'll find 2 images here. This is the one of them, and this is the one that I used for this manipulation. I think I'm going to use this one for the tutorial because I like the mouth is a little more visible, and I like the expression a little more. This one is a little more serious, but you can use any of the 2. You'll see that they are in RAW format, and you'll also find 2 files here in XMP format. One with the name of the file and one that's called Raw Initial Edit. I used this for the original PSD file, but this one is here because when I used this one for when I edited the image, Photoshop already creates this XMP file for you. So if you open it, you will see that it's gonna have some edits on it already, but you can use the other file, or you can just click here and click load settings, and you can use the Raw Initial Edit if you want, and you'll apply the other edits, but they're pretty similar. What I did here is as you can see, I just tweaked the settings here. I just lowered the highlights a little bit, and here on the HSL you will see that I dropped the saturation of the oranges and reds because I wanted to desaturate the skin tones a little bit. And what else? Here on the process, on the calibration, sorry, I made some color tweaks, and that's pretty much it. I think the luminance, I didn't change anything. Now, instead of opening image, I press the Shift key and click Open Object. And I will choose Use the Embedded Profile instead of Working Space, because otherwise I will lose the color. So this is the image that I'm going to start working with. I'm going to name this image Normal. And I'm going to make a copy of it with Ctrl J. Now, before I continue, what I want to do is change the composition. The composition, the way it is right now, it's not bad, but it's not really that good because, well, the woman is here just straight on the center. So I want to move it offside just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to make the copy before I move and I have my composition ready. So first I'm going to move this towards the side like that. And first, well, I'm going to make the image a little smaller, 4000 pixels for this tutorial because I'm also recording the video. Okay, now let's move on and let's make that copy again. I'm going to drag it underneath and I'm going to name this hair. Okay, this will be the image that I'm going to use for the hair. Make sure they're both one on top of the other and you don't move them. You can also lock them if you select both of them and choose right click and choose link layers, sorry. Okay, so before we remove the background and everything, let's create let's create our background because we're gonna see better what we're doing with the new background. So let's go to our stock folder right here and let's work with this image. I'm gonna drag it right in here. And the first thing I want to do is make it a little bigger and I'm gonna blur it. So I'm gonna go to filter. I like to use the blur gallery, use the fill blur because it's gives you more quality. It preserves the lines. The difference between the fill blur and the Gaussian blur is that the Gaussian blur blurs everything on a linear way, on a constant way, while this fill blur keeps the lines, as you can see here, and it's more realistic. Okay, you can also create bokeh effects. But I'm not interested in that right now. I'm gonna increase the blur. You can check the image and see more or less the amount of blur that my lens had on the image and try to match that if you want, but I'm gonna do it by eye. About 58 pixels. On the original I used 80 pixels because I used the original canvas size, which was 6000 by 4000 pixels. I'm gonna click OK. And let's wait for the filter to apply. The fill blur takes a little longer to apply, especially if you have the high quality option checked. Okay, now I have the blur, the new background. Let's drag it underneath, and I'm gonna name this BG1. And the BG2 is another stock image which I got also from unsplash.com, which is this one, but I cannot find it anymore. So I'm gonna give you this blurred image already. In case I don't find it, so maybe you will find this blurred image in the stock folder because I didn't save the URL, so I cannot find it. So I just blurred this with the same amount as the other one and just drop the opacity to 55% and put it on top, and I'm gonna name this BG2. As simple as that. Okay, now I'm gonna reactivate the normal layer for now, and I'm gonna create a layer mask. Now, the way I mask this is really simple. I didn't create any advanced masking. When you work with blurred images like this, it's easier to integrate an image, even these hairs around here, if both backgrounds match a little bit in terms of color and brightness, you can easily match both images without having to create any complex maskings. So I'm going to show how I did this. First, I used the pen tool, and I made sure that I have this on path. It's important that both the normal and the hair layers are linked and they're exactly one on top of the other without any kind of movement. And let's start from here. This is supposed to be a bow, but it's actually just a stick that she's holding, and that's how we made the photo. So there's no arrow there. So create just a straight line. Let's undo that. My undo buttons are not working. I don't know what I did with Photoshop, but I cannot undo. Okay, so just make sure you crop part of the edge. We're gonna blur this again, so don't worry about the edges. Just make sure you crop part of it, a few pixels, and then crop the hair like this. We're gonna recover all of this manually using a soft brush a little later on. So just do something like this. Zoom out and create your selection outside the canvas. Right click and choose make selection. Click OK, and I'm going to invert it with Shift Command I, and I'm going to fill this with black. Now I'm using keyboard shortcuts, you can see them on the screen. I don't like to go to the menus. As I said, this is a bit of an advanced tutorial, so I'm not gonna explain these basic steps. Let's do the same here on the bottom part. For some reason, the mask comes up inverted, and I want to know if there's a way to create the mask inverted already. Okay, this part over here, I'm gonna crop it like so. I want to keep it. You'll see why in just a second. And continue with my crop here. Oh yeah, you can, instead of right clicking, you can see this button here that choose make selection. You can also make a mask already. Yeah, I'm gonna click OK, and it comes up inverted. I don't know why. So I'm gonna invert it and fill it with black. Okay, now my selection is ready. This part over here, I'm gonna brush it manually, so don't worry too much about it. So a really rough selection, really rough. Just keep the basic part of the shape, the shape of the body. Okay, let's move to the hair layer now. We're gonna use the multiply method. So what I'm gonna do is just choose the blend mode, multiply. You can try others, but multiply is the one that works best. Once I change this to multiply, you can see the whole image darkens. So what I have to do, this is still a smart object, and it's the same smart object as this one. So if I double click here, and this will open it in Camera Raw. If I make an edit in Camera Raw, it's gonna update this one as well. So keep that in mind. If you wanna unlink them, you have to right click here and choose New Smart Object via Copy. I don't know if there's a way of doing it after you make the copy. Convert to Smart Object, Export Contents. I don't know if there's a way of unlinking this smart object from the other one once you create it. Okay, so once I have that, I'm gonna press Ctrl-Command-L, and I'm gonna open the levels, and I want to brighten this up a little bit. The darks a little bit, well, not too much. Let's work with the midtones, and especially with the highlights. Well, let's leave everything how it was. The midtones to 1, and increase the highlights, darken the midtones. Like that. Well, you wanna keep the hair. As I said, we're gonna brush this, and we're gonna mix the image. You don't want to care too much about the transition here, just the hair outside there. Okay, so maybe I increased too much the highlights. Yeah, something like that. Maybe the midtones and darken the darks. Yeah, I think that looks good enough. I'm gonna click OK. And I'm gonna desaturate the image as well with Ctrl-U. You can see this creates smart filters. I'm gonna desaturate the image quite a lot. -50, I think it's okay. And now we're good to mask this. Before I move on, well, actually, let's not rasterize this yet. Let's create an inverted layer mask. Alt-click the layer mask. This will hide everything. Okay, now once we have this like this, let's select the normal layer mask. And let's blur this even more. Well, mask it even more. With this brush, I'm going to set the opacity and float to 100%. And I'm going to paint with black with this soft brush to soften the edges a little smaller. And I think we're now good to go. Let's go to the hair layer now and paint with white to reveal the image underneath with the hair. Like so. You will see that it's too dark. Don't worry now. Just reveal the hair like so. I'm gonna use a lower opacity, about 50, and opacity maybe 60. Flow 60, sorry. And just a couple of passes like so. And you can see that the new background that I have here, this white, matches the original white background that we had there. So it's safe to paint this because they're blending pretty well. Okay. Working with small brushes, trying to reveal these hairs over here might not work well. Here it's gonna work because we have that white, pure white background, so it's gonna work. But here, maybe it's not gonna work that well. So working with big soft brushes and low opacities in many cases is going to be better. Okay, now we have this. As you can see, it's too dark. So the way we recover part of that, we could use the levels again to maybe brighten this part up. But instead of doing that, I'm going to go back to the normal layer. And with the brush, with the same soft brush, with a lower opacity and flow, this time maybe 30 and flow, well, let's leave the flow to 60. Let's see what happens. And I'm going to paint with white again here over the same area. Remember, we have this. I'm going to paint over the same area to reveal and blend it with the hair layer and with the background. So it's just a blending thing here, and you don't have to be too precise. The most important thing here is to use the right opacity and flow. I'm going to drop the flow to 30. The more you drop it, the more control you're going to have. Oh, oops, 30. And maybe the opacity to 40. And you can see I'm painting over the same areas, and the hair comes back to life and it's going to blend with the background. In this case, I think I use it. The opacity is too high, 20 and 10, because this area is really dark. So we only have to recover it until we blend it with this green dark area here. Okay, as you can see, you can even paint around here to reveal part of the original background, because you can see it has this greenish tone, and I think it's gonna blend just good enough so we can continue. Also keep in mind that for this particular tutorial, and you can use this in your favor in many edits that you make, is that at the end we're gonna add, well, not at the end, but we're gonna add this plants here, which is gonna hide part of the hair. So parts that you're not able to mask that with good enough, you can hide them with details like vegetations and stuff like that. Okay, so that's how I blended this. Okay, a couple of things before we continue. We still have this part over here. We can do this with the same brush. Well, actually with the stronger, well, with the higher opacity, 60 and 80, and paint with white. Here we have a bit of a manual work, but first let's hide this completely with black, and then reveal it on the hair layer. So that hair layer is not only the hair, is also this detail over here. You can hide it completely, nobody will know, but since it's here, I like to keep it because it looks nice. I bought this, I don't know how it's called, bracelet. I bought it on Amazon for this photo shoot. So let's reveal that on this new layer. Let's drop the opacity of this layer mask so I can see through it. I'm going to paint with white with the low opacity 50 and 20. Opacity 50 and flow 20. And just paint over it like that. Okay, and now I'm going to increase the opacity back to 100%. I don't know why they call this density. It's just like the opacity, yeah. It's the density, but I think it actually acts like the opacity. So let's brush over this like that. I'm doing it a little quick. If you're careful and patient enough, you can do it a lot better than I'm doing, but I don't want to make the tutorial too long. So yeah, I'm doing it like that. Anyways, we're going to blur this so it's not going to be visible like that. So what I'm going to do is now duplicate the normal layer and put it underneath. It's important that we have the same layer mask as on the normal, and let's name this blur, because now I'm going to apply this layer mask. I'm going to right click because I want to blur this. Maybe some of you could ask, why do you want to blur it if you already have it blurred on the image itself? Well, it has this transition here and it's hard to mask it. So it's a lot easier, even if I lose part of the edge here, when I create the layer mask, I can still blur it and nobody would know that this is actually not a real blur. So all I need to do is apply this layer mask, right click and choose apply layer mask, if I can. First, I think I have to rasterize the layer, yes, because it's a smart object. So first, right click on the layer, choose rasterize layer, and now I can apply the layer mask. Right click on the layer mask and choose apply layer mask. Okay, now I lost the information of the layer mask. I can no longer edit it, but I have these details here which I can use. Now, in order to blur this, first I want to recover this part over here. I'm going to use the clone sand tool, and I'm going to use a bigger brush. Alt click here to sample and try to align this and just paint. Okay, now that we have this blur layer ready, we need to hide the part that we're going to blur, which is everything here. Let me show you on a new layer. This part over here, this one and this one, will be blurred. So I'm going to have it on this separate layer. So I don't need it on a normal layer. So what I'm going to do is go to the normal layer and mask this out. So maybe part of the the hard part of this tutorial is understanding a little bit how I do these things, but get the brush tool, use an opacity and flow of 100% and paint this out. I'm going to hide the blur layer so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is the part that I'm removing. Okay, I'm going to remove that part, and now I'm going to activate the blur layer, and now I'm going to go to filter, blur, and well, just go to the filter instead. And you can see that I can blur this out without having to care about the edges, because when you mask an edge and you have that 1 or 2 pixels of white border, when you create blur, it's gonna add even more blur on even more white edge there. Okay, and I think it's easier this way. I don't know, 26 pixel I think looks realistic enough. Just use this blurring as guide, and maybe it's too much, about 22, and click OK. And now we have the blur part on one layer, the hair on another, and the normal layer on another, which I think looks good. Now probably this part over here we should mask it on the hair layer, so just leave it on the blur layer here. Okay, great. Now we're done with the model. The part of the hard part of this tutorial is done. So let's select the 3 layers and group them with Control Command G, and let's name this Archer. Okay, let's build up a little more our background. So let's add those, that vegetation. Actually, between the 2 background layers I had a color lookup. Let me check my notes here. I had a color lookup with the preset tension green, which comes with Photoshop over here, and I had it at 36%. Remember, I'm going towards this bluish tone, so just try add tones that contribute to that general look. Okay, next I have a curves on top of the whole thing here on the background. Curves, not levels. You could use levels, but I'm going to use curves, and I'm gonna have to go to the blue channel, and here I have 2 points, one with input. I'm gonna give you the values that I'm using. If you don't see the values, it's just because you have to extend this like that. 34 and output 44. Oops, not 400, 44. 434. Oh yeah, I forgot that my 3 key is not working. I don't know why. Well, my keyboard is really old. 187 and output 171, and then on the green channel I have 1 single point with input 81 and output 78, and then on the reds I have 2 points, one with input 83 and output 84, and another one with input 200 and output 204. So this is what I do with the curves. I just change a little bit the look of this the background. Okay, let's move on, and we're gonna start with that vegetation. As I said, I'm gonna create a new layer on top of everything, and I'm gonna group it right away, and I'm gonna name this Vegetation 1. And in here I'm gonna put some stock images. I'm gonna start with this one. I'm gonna open it. I got these images from unsplash.com. You can see the name of the author here, Mitch Lensink. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'm going to unlock it, get the magic wand tool. I'm going to click on the background, and that's it. I'm going to mask it. I'll click on the layer mask, and I'm going to do something here. I'm going to refine the mask. And the reason why I do this is because if I don't do this, you're going to see a white edge. I'm going to try and show you that. I'm going to first apply it and apply the blur on this without refining the edge. Hopefully you will see the problem. I don't know if you can see it. We have a bit of a white edge here. Yeah, see that? If you don't remove that, when you apply the blur, it's going to magnify that effect, that edge. You're going to see that in just a second. I'm going to make this smaller. Put it right over here. Yeah, something like that. Okay. You don't want to hide, cover the girl entirely, just parts of her. And now I'm going to go to fill blur again. And I'm going to apply maybe, I don't know, 30. Well, in this case, yeah, it's not really that visible. Maybe because of how the fill blur works. But usually, especially if you apply the Gaussian blur, that white edge is going to be magnified. Yeah, you can see it here a little bit. And it's not nice, so try and remove that edge using the refine edge. I'm going to show you how to do that on the next image because this one seems to work nice. I'm going to set the blur to 35 pixels. Click OK. Wait for the filter to apply. And I'm going to open another image. And this time it's going to be this one. You can use other images if you want to. And just click on the white background. Make sure that contiguous is unchecked. And click OK. If you can see that in this part over here, part of the plant is selected. If you don't want to remove the selection from that part, if the entire leaf is not selected, you can leave it like this because we're going to blur it anyway and it's not going to be visible. But you can also remove this with the magic wand using the quick selection tool, sorry. And you can please click the alt click and just remove that. Okay, I'm going to create the inverted layer mask, and here what I would do usually is right click and choose refine, select and mask or refine edge or whatever you have. They change the name on different versions of Photoshop, and just shift the edge like that, increase the feather a few pixels, and then increase the contrast. This removes part of the edge. Let me show you that. If I change the view mode to overlay, or I don't know, maybe marching ants, onion skin, yeah, the marching ants. And I'm going to show the original. You can see how I removed part of that. Okay, and that's what I wanted. I'm going to click OK and apply the layer mask, and now I'm going to move this to my canvas right over here and put it right there. And you can see how these leaves mask part of the hair. They cover it, okay, and also covers that part over there which was cropped. So I'm going to apply the blur gallery again. Okay, we're good to go. The next thing we want to do is start creating the makeup. So we're going to do that, and after that we're going to create some color grading for these plants, and then we're going to go to Camera Raw and make the final edit. Okay, let's go with the makeup. I'm going to put everything here inside the Archer group, the makeup. And so inside the Archer I have these 3 layers, which I'm going to group again. I'm going to name this model. Now I'm going to make a new group. So create a new layer, Control G, and I'm going to name this makeup. well, let's name it eyes instead, because first we're gonna work on the eyes and then we're gonna make the makeup. So on the eyes layer, I'm gonna add the solid color, and the color that I used is A0, A0, A0. This white, well, this light gray, and I use this to give more light on the eyes. You can do this with dodge and burn, which we're gonna also add later on, but I use this layer. I'm gonna invert the layer mask, and I'm gonna change the blind mode of this layer to color dodge. This will add more brightness on the eyes. I'm gonna get the brush tool and opacity and flow 100%, and yep. The hardness I'm gonna leave it to about 80%. You can take a look at the eyes and you can see they're not very hard, the edges. Yeah, actually even softer. So let's drop the hardness even more to about 50%. Like so. This dark edge, this dark edge here, you can actually leave it on. I'm gonna repaint it back because that always looks nice on the edge, well, on the eyes, and on top of that you will not have to use a dodge and burn to recreate it, because we're gonna have to recreate it otherwise if you delete it. Okay, let's do the same here. I'm gonna drop the hardness even more to 30% and just paint like that. Okay, now I'm gonna repaint this back like so. The black of the eye here, I think it's called the pupil or something like that. I don't know how it's called in English, but you paint that back end. We want to have it really dark. Of course, this is very extreme. We're gonna edit this once we add the color, and for the color I used the hue saturation adjustment layer. So I'm gonna create a new layer underneath and create a hue saturation. Well, actually no, the layer is not necessary. And I'm gonna get this layer mask which I just created. I'm gonna copy it here, and the way you do this is with the Alt key, click and drag it over the hue saturation layer mask and just replace it. And here I'm gonna give you the values that I have. You can use the colorize if you want and just use a lower opacity on the lower saturation, or you can leave the normal, which is what I will do in this particular case, because it's gonna keep part of the original color there. I'm gonna give you the values. I have 141 for the hue, saturation -24, and lightness to 0. Now I'm gonna drop the opacity of these two. Let's see, 78 or 75%. This will keep part of the original color and just give this bluish tint. Now the light is too bright, the eyes are too bright, so I'm gonna drop. You can either drop the opacity of this layer, or you can use a darker tone. I'm gonna use a darker tone. You want to keep it fairly natural, so don't go crazy with this. Now I'm gonna go back here. This edge, it's too brown, so what I'm gonna do is just paint with the 50 and 20 flow with black on this color fill 1, which I'm gonna name brightness, and this I'm gonna name color. So inside the eyes group we have the brightness, which is the solid color that gives the brightness, which we have in color dodge blend mode, and the color which we have on normal. So on this layer mask of the brightness, I'm gonna paint with black to well, with white, sorry, to reveal part of that, like so. And also here on the color, but with a lower opacity, just 30 and flow 20. Okay, well, actually on the brightness we don't have to touch it. I just undo. I click the undo button. I just want to remove here the color on the, well, then the layer mask on the color layer mask, basically allowing the color layer to affect this edge as well, because remember I copied the same layer mask from the, yeah, it looks a lot better. Probably the brightness also we should paint a little bit. like so. I think it looks a little better. Okay, just do your best. Okay, yeah, and probably just make it just a little bit darker. With the dodge and burn, we're gonna fix this, so use a darker tone. Just change the tone of the eyes from that to this. Okay, we're done with the eyes color and everything. Let's make the makeup, which is could be difficult for some of you. I'm gonna create a new group underneath the eyes and between the model and the eyes, and I'm gonna group it, and I'm gonna name this makeup. So we have two parts of makeup, as you can see here. We have this blue stripe line here, and then we have this line. This is the easy part, this is the more complex part. Let's start with the difficult part. Let's name, well, let's not name anything. Let's just get the brush tool, opacity and flow 100%, and I'm gonna give you the color values that I have, but you can use others. Anyways, after you paint, you can change the hues and the saturations and everything. The color that I used this technique on 2 layers because sometimes it's difficult to make the skin texture show through in a realistic way. You can use blend modes, but still sometimes it's not looking nice. So I used 2 layers. One I used as a base to create the first color base, and then I used the second one for contrast and full color. So let's name the first one base, and then create a new layer on top, and let's name this color. Great, now on the base layer, I used the following color. I used the color code 1F57CA. So this blue, really blue tone. You will see that even though this is the base, it has a stronger color than the color layer. You will see that. I'm gonna change the blend mode of this to color, and I'm gonna use a brush tool, pretty hard, it doesn't really matter, and I'm gonna just paint with opacity and flow 100%, just paint like this, really big chunk of color, like so. We just want to have room because we're gonna paint this out and then paint it back in. Okay, this is our base. I'm gonna hide it for now, and now I'm going to the color layer, and the color that I used for this is 77839D. You can see it's really desaturated, but it doesn't matter. We're gonna paint again a really big part like this, part of her face, all of her eyes there. Don't be shy with this, just paint a big part like that. Well, actually this was on hue, not on color, so put it on hue, like so. And the color layer, we have to put it on color burn. You can see this is what I was looking for. I wanted to have these highlights and also have, you can see the texture and everything. We still have to do a few things here, which one of them is the blend if option. I'm gonna leave the base as it is for now and just go to the color, double click, and I'm gonna use the blend if options over here. And I'm gonna tell Photoshop that if the underlaying layer have white highlights, I don't want to blend that. So I'm gonna just click and move this until I start to see parts of the color disappearing, like so. When you get to that point, press and hold the Alt key and separate this and move them separately. You don't want to go crazy about this, just a little bit, like so. And you can try the same with the blacks. Do something like that. Don't care about the eyes, we're gonna mask that. Just look at the skin. We're gonna have the paint, I cannot change to the other, but we're just gonna change this. We're just gonna have this blue color here around the eyes. So try and do the same with the blacks and see what you get. That's too much. Something like that, especially the whites. This is gonna work especially well for the highlights. And click OK. You can do the same on the base if you want. Move this like that, and then just spread this, but just a little less than on the other layer. Click OK. Now, what we have to do is create 2 inverted layer masks. Alt click and Alt click. This will hide the entire color. And now comes the part where we have to paint this back in and get something like this. Here I did it manually. We have to do it manually anyway, but this part here it was very difficult to make, at least for me. And then I came up with the idea of using a special brush from a paint stroke, which worked pretty well. So the way I did it, I'm gonna do it here, is I have a pack of brushes called watercolor brushes. You can download it for free you can download it from my website, from a premium site, but I'm gonna include the brushes on the resources folder so you don't have to download it. So basically you get a brush from here, and you can see they're really huge. You can see how they look like. I'm gonna just paint a few strokes here. You can see they look like, well, it's like brush, and this gives the look like she painted herself with a brush or with her hands actually. So just get your mouse. In this case I'm gonna do it with the mouse because I don't want to move this at all. And I just want to do this for the edges. So first I can use a normal brush. I could use a normal brush with a pretty high hardness value, and I just want to paint around the eyes on the top part and not on the bottom. So just paint, select the layer mask first, paint with white, like so. This is actually blue, but it's too strong, so don't worry too much about that. Just create the first pass just to the level of the eyes. Then we're going to use the other brush just to about there. Paint with white, something like that, and also here on the bottom, like so. Now I'm gonna get the other brush that I just showed you. I'm gonna get maybe this one. There are many others which you can use. You want to look for brushes that have those lines at their end, at the end of the, on each side of the brush. Yeah, this one could work as well, but let me use that one because it looks nice. This one, 5 PSD bucks. I always put my name at the end of the brushes names. That way I know that it's a brush that I made myself. So with this brush with white, in this case I'm going to rotate it just slightly because I want to go slightly upwards. I'm going to put it there and just make a few clicks on the same spot. Now it's too big. Let's undo. The problem with these brushes is they're really transparent. So let me look for something different. Yeah, this one could work. These ones are good, but you have to make a lot of clicks because they're not 100% opaque. So yeah, something like that. You want something like brushed on the edges. Let's look for this one and see how this one looks like. As I said, you're gonna have this brush pack on the resources folder. Yeah, I think that looks nice. And let's go to the other side. Of course, on the top part, you can use a soft brush. Now, let me get my pen back. Just first remove this from here. You can use a soft brush for the top part. Let's undo that. And paint with white and just repaint parts of that on. Back on the image, like so. Here, the black part, I don't want to have it. I want to have it, okay, like so. I just care about the highlights here, so the blacks don't touch them. Okay, like that. Great, now we have this ready. The next thing we want to do is copy this layer mask onto the base layer. Click yes, and this is how it looks like. Of course, this color is too strong. So we're gonna have to drop the opacity of the color layer. About there. See how it looks like? The eyebrows, maybe you could remove that. If you don't want to see the color on the eyebrows, you always paint on the layer mask of the color layer. For example, like this, if you want to remove part of it. And then you copy this layer mask back to on the base layer. You want to have exactly the same layer mask on both of them. What you could do is use a layer mask on the group itself, and then you affect both layers at the same time. But I don't think that could give you some problems, so it's not difficult to just make on one and then just copy it on the second layer. Okay, so that's how I made this. On the edges here, you want to have something like I have here, like lines and stuff like that. And here you could use those brushes again, these ones. Okay, and I'm gonna copy the layer mask to the other one, and we're good to go. Not looking bad, but not looking that good either. I made it really quick. Try to get something like this. Okay, next we have to create this dark shadow under the eye, and we're gonna create that on a new layer. I'm gonna put it on, we could work with color burn, looks nice. And I'm gonna sample a color from here and desaturate it quite a lot. And we're gonna use the same technique. We're gonna paint with a normal brush this time, a big area here, like so. It's a lot easier to do something like this and then just paint back on the area that you want than just trying to carefully paint without touching some other area. So just paint something like this. And now you can edit the color. You know, we have the layer, the linear burn. Press Ctrl Command U and adjust the lightness, maybe even more. Yeah, something like this. We don't want to have something completely black, so try to have something like this with some brightness on it. Click OK, and now I'm going to create a layer mask inverted, of course, and I'm going to start painting the lines here. I'm going to change my transfer to pen pressure. That's how it looks like. If it's too brown, you can create a hue saturation on the model, on the normal layer, which you have here on the normal layer. Create the hue saturation. Hue saturation, go to the makeup, control click on the layer mask. This will select what you've just painted. Go here and create the layer mask there. Well, actually inverted. Oops. Inverted. And you can drop the saturation of that part, like so, if it's too brown, okay? Basically, you're desaturating this part of the skin that have exactly the same shape as this makeup. Of course, if you modify this, you have to copy the layer mask from here to here, to that layer that I just created, this one, okay? Okay, we're good to, well, we have to create that line over here. That's really easy. We get a new layer, we leave it on normal, and let's name it white line. On the original PSD file, you can take a look and see how I made exactly that. What I'm gonna do here is create a sample a color from here, and then just make it a little brighter and desaturate it. You don't want to have something completely white; it's not gonna look realistic. So create something a little darker. Create a just test it on the skin with opacity and flow 100%. And just create a line and see how that looks like. I think it looks okay. Makeup is not completely white. Maybe this one is a little too dark, just slightly brighter. And have a slight touch of the skin tone. And now I'm gonna use a brush. I'm gonna open the brushes tool of the brushes panel here. This one. And I would like to select a brush that has, it doesn't have to be a straight line like this, is not looking realistic, but if you want, you can do it. I want something that is a little more, not that regular here on the edges. So I'm gonna activate dual brush. See this one, I'm gonna deactivate it. Well, the transfer looks nice. Maybe changing the blend mode from that to multiply. Yeah, you can see the edges. I'm gonna increase the size so you can see. I want to have some jagged edges there, okay? Try different blend modes, they look different. And change the count as well. And try, just make a test. That's too jagged, I don't like it. I'm gonna increase the count quite a lot and see how that looks now. Yeah, that looks a little better. I don't know, try different brushes. Yeah, this one thing, it looks nice. Yeah, like so, scatter, I think that's okay. Okay, I'm gonna leave like that and just create a line like so. And another one like so. Don't create a straight line, a perfectly straight line. Try to follow the the lines of the body. Okay, the direction of the body. Now that we have this, we have to do the same here. Double click on the layer to open the layer styles, and we have to use the blend if. Here we're gonna play with the blacks and the whites. So I'm gonna move this towards here, and now split this. And you can start to see how this fades away. Maybe it's fading away too much. Let's do the same with the highlights. The reason why I'm doing this is because the makeup is not showing the same on all parts of the skin. Where you have pure highlights, it's gonna fade. Well, it's not gonna be that visible. Oops, this one like so. I think that one looks a little better. You can even create two layers actually, because this one, I'm gonna select it and right click and choose layer via cut. Because this one, the bottom one, needs a different amount of blend if options, okay? So we could try something like that and probably make it a little brighter using the lightness option. Yeah, it's not working because I have too much. I'm fading this too much. Oh yeah, that's not looking nice. It's just that it was not updating, okay. That and this one as well, just a touch brighter. Okay. Okay, now we have the makeup and you can see through it a little bit and it blends with the skin a little better. It's too straight, the line here, I think it looks a little better. If you're taking a photo shoot and you want to create this kind of painting, maybe it's even easier to paint it yourself with your hands and then just retouch it in Photoshop. It's gonna be a little easier, maybe. Okay, let's move on. And on the eyes here, you can desaturate these parts. You can create a hue saturation adjustment. And of course, with an inverted layer mask, I'm going to select just the reds. And actually, I'm going to use the hand to just sample this color and desaturate part of that, like so. And now I'm going to invert the layer mask with Control I or Command I. And then with the brush, I'm going to paint with opacity 50 and flow 70. With white to reveal the effect only here on the eyes and just remove some of that redness on the eyes, those veins. Great, now let's move on and create the dodge and burn on top of everything. Yeah, I forgot to create the frequency separation. Let's keep here inside the Archer layer. I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to group it and I'm going to name this frequency separation, FS. What I'm going to do here, we just need the frequency separation on the skin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a snapshot of the whole thing here twice. I'm going to press Shift Alt Command E one and twice. This is going to create a stamp. Basically, it's going to merge all the layers onto these two layers that I have here. I'm gonna name one of them light and the other one I'm gonna name it details. And I'm gonna go a little quick because I already have tutorials showing you how to use the frequency separation, and on the internet is full of this kind of tutorials. I'm gonna do it a little rough, the style of Aaron Nate from Flern. He uses this technique and it's really easy and quick. So on the light layer, we go to to filter, blur, and I'm going to use Gaussian blur. And I'm going to use, let's see, an amount of blur that, first deactivate the layer so we can see the blur. Blur, Gaussian blur on the light layer, of course. And the amount of blur that you put here depends on the size of the image. Basically, you want to get rid of the details, but you can still want to tell the features of the face, the eyes, nose, and everything. But you don't want to see the pores and the skin texture. Click OK. Now, activate the details layer. Make sure you don't move them. They have to be one on top of the other one exactly. And on the details layer, we go to image, apply image. On the source, we choose layer. We choose the blur, the light layer that we just created. That's why it's a good idea to name your layers, because you'll find the list here and you will not know which is which. So select the light layer, this one here. And on the blending, we're gonna choose subtract. Make sure you have the scale to 2 and the offset to 128. And I'm gonna click OK. Now we have to change the blend mode of this details layer to linear light. And if you've done everything right, when you deactivate this FS group, nothing should happen on the skin. Here you'll see this flickering because it's actually a copy of that layer, but it doesn't matter. So the face should not have any kind of change at all. As I said, we only did this on the skin. So on this group, I'm gonna create an inverted layer mask and just paint back in the face with white. Like so. Make sure I remove that from there. Let's go back inside the FS group. I'm gonna select the light layer now. I'm gonna select the lasso tool. And here we have to change the feather because what I wanna do is fade chunks of light here. I wanna fade them off a little bit and soften them. So just select a chunk of light like that and you have to blur it. But the way, if you wanna see the feather amount, just activate the quick mask option. This will show you the amount of fade that you have. You can see how it looks like here. And if I use a feather of 0, this is how it looks like. But this is not good because when we blur this, you're gonna see the hard edge. So feather it. It depends on how big your image is, but something like this amount of feather is enough. And then go to filter, blur, and choose Gaussian blur. And for example, for the light layer you use 6.8, use something higher, about 10 maybe. Double it, okay? And this will soften your skin. Well, it softens the light and the shadows basically. Filter, Gaussian blur, and the same here. You will see this when I activate and reactivate this. Actually, you can see when I apply it, you can see the change. Filter, Gaussian blur, and here as well. Filter, Gaussian blur. Now, if I deactivate and reactivate this, you will see how I softened this. Let's do the same on the details. We have to use the clone stamp tool. As I said, I'm going a bit quick and I'm not explaining in detail what I'm doing here because I already have tutorials showing you how to use this. And if you want to know these techniques in a little more detail, just search Flern frequency separation, and he uses exactly the same technique. Here on the details layer, we use the clone stamp tool. Make sure the sample is set to current layer. Use the hardness, so about 50%, and just clone from anywhere. We just copy texture here. We don't have light information, so I could hide this here. Just sample from here with the Alt key, click and paste and do something like this. The frequency separation is used a lot in photo manipulation, in photo retouching. Sorry, I'm not a retouching guru, so I just use the techniques that I see on the internet. Usually I don't make retouching, even though I like it a little bit, but I'm not a high-end retoucher. I prefer to make photo manipulations, but sometimes retouching and techniques like this work well for certain images, and it's good to know this kind of techniques. I think I'm gonna leave it like this. I'm not, as I said, this is not a beauty retouching tutorial, so I'm not going to go crazy with this, but it's good enough to just retouch the face a little bit and add some beauty on the face if that's what you're looking for. Okay, let's go with the dodging and burning. Create a new layer. Let's name it DB for dodging and burning. Go to edit, fill, and choose 50% gray on the contents, and change the blend mode to overlay. You can also use soft light, or even I think even vivid light, hard light work, but they are too strong for my taste, so I'm going to use it on overlay. And here we're going to paint with black and white, opacity 10, flow 10. I'm going to paint with black first to darken parts of the light, parts of the of the face. Sorry, something's wrong. Yeah, I have the dual brush activated, which is not what I want. Just use a regular brush. Let's select one from here. Opacity 0. Let's see why I cannot select yeah, this one. Just a regular soft brush with a low spacing, and as I said, 10 and 10 opacity and flow, it's enough. You can see how I can darken shadows, I can deepen well, part of the eyes here, darken the eyebrows. On the hair, I can darken part of the hair and give it more volume. Well, you know what dodging and burning does. If you don't know that, I have a tutorial on YouTube. Well, I think I have more than one, but I have at least one dedicated especially to dodging and burning, explaining how to do it, why I do it, and the effects that it gets. Here on the eyes, I'm gonna darken this part and get something like this. This enhances the eyes a lot. And then we're gonna do the opposite on the highlights of the eyes, on the reflections. Okay, this thing over here. Let's press the X key and switch to white. I'm gonna increase the opacity to 20 and the flow to 20 as well. And I'm gonna paint on this part of the eye just to make this reflection stand out a lot more. This will make the eye, well, it's gonna stand out a lot more and it's gonna catch the attention. That's the goal. Sometimes, in this case, I'm gonna do it a little bit extreme because I like how it looks like. But in most cases, especially if you're doing higher end retouching, you have to do it more naturally because sometimes they look really weird. So keep that in mind. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Yeah, you can see it's really extreme. You can see how they look like, but I like that. Also, with opacity 10, I'm gonna, and flow 0, 0, 1, no, 0, 1 and 10. I'm gonna just, well, brighten parts of her, well, the nose and parts from here and also from the hair. Really basic and really quick dodging and burning. You can see what we do, especially for the eyes. Okay, now let's go with the color grading, the first color grading. I'm gonna create a new layer, I'm gonna group it, and I'm gonna name this color grade. The first adjustment that I'm gonna use, let me check my notes, is a hue saturation adjustment. And I use this for the green plants here, the vegetation. So I'm gonna select the greens and I'm gonna change the hue to 30. This will do 30. This will make them more bluish. And I'm gonna drop the saturation to -70. And then the lightness to -14. I wanna make them stand out a little less. These ones, we still have some problem. You can create we can create another hue saturation only for these ones, but I think it's not necessary. Next, a color lookup. The presets that I'm going to use for the color lookup, you will find them on the resources folder, on the stock folder. And what you have to do is just click here and choose load 3D LUT. This is what I'm going to do now because I don't have my presets here. I reinstalled Photoshop and I don't have them here. I have to put them on the 3D LUTs folder, those presets that I have. But the presets that I'm going to use, you can download the whole pack from my website from members.psdbox.com, go to the resources section, or from the download section, go to the resources tab, and from there you'll find the packages. But I'm gonna look for them from my computer, but these particular presets, you'll find them on the resources folder. So all you have to do is just go here, just go to stock, and you'll find them here. I have to look for them on my computer. The first one is from the landscape package. So go to stock photos, ordinay, presets, and 3D LUTs. And I'm gonna use the landscape V1 cube, and I use the LA6.cube. Open that, and you can see this bluish tone that it creates, and I drop this to 15%. Then I used another one. I'm going to duplicate this, and this one is the LA14. This one. This is the effect that it creates before and after, and I dropped this to 62%. And in between, I have another one, another color lookup, and this one is a preset that I downloaded from internet a long time ago, and I don't even remember where I downloaded it from. You're gonna have it there. I'm gonna go to the applications folder because I have it on my old Photoshop, in Photoshop CC 2018, on the presets, 3D LUTs. It's the CS60s Crush. Also a bluish tone. You could use the Crisp Winter. I guess you will get a similar result. And this, I dropped it to 9%. And this is what it creates, a colder tone overall. So this is the color grading that I made, really basic. And next, the final touch with Camera Raw. Create a new layer, Shift Alt Command E to merge everything onto this new layer. I'm gonna turn this into a smart object just because that's how I work. Go to Filter and choose Camera Raw. If you don't have Photoshop CC, you cannot use this as a filter, so you have to save this image as a TIFF file and then open it back in Photoshop, and by default it should open it in Camera Raw. Next, the edits that I made here I don't even remember. I just remember that I created a radial filter like so, because I wanted to darken the top part. So first reset the local corrections, drop the exposure a little bit, make it color, not too much. Clarity, increase it just a bit, and yeah, you can see how it looks like. I don't know if I can make a before and after, but anyways, this is how it looks like. Next, another filter like this for the face. Make sure you have this work on the inside. First, reset, increase clarity quite a bit, increase the highlights a little, not too much, and the contrast. This is just to make the face stand out a little more. If you want to make local corrections on colors, you can go to the HSL. For example, here, those greens, I want them to be more bluish, and the aquas to be more, well, like this. Well, actually, I'm working on the luminance. Let's go to the saturation, the hue, sorry. Those greens, I want them to be more bluish. I can do it from here, or the aquas, I want them to be more blue. And well, change the tones from here. Of course, the saturation, you can change that as well. I can desaturate this if I want that. More light on the skin tone, well, more saturation on the skin tones. Whatever you want, you can do it from here, or the luminance, you can change that from here as well. And then on the effects, I created some post-crop vignetting. This is gonna create a really nice darkness around her. Highlights, I always leave it to 100%. Midpoint, reduced it a little bit. I decreased the saturation too much on the blues and the aquas. And well, it's pretty much up to you what you do here. The clarity of the whole image a little higher, a little more vibrance. I didn't change the temperature, I think. As I said, I don't remember the edits that I do here, but usually I make a really quick edit, as you can see here. Also on the FX, what I did something weird that, and I don't know why, but in this case I like how it works, how it looks like, is I added some grain on the image. On the original I added too much, but maybe more roughness and a little bit bigger size. I think makes it look a little more natural, and I like how it looks like. And here on the calibration, you can just change this to whatever you want. You can change the channels and make everything look different in terms of tones. Well, the tones make them look different. Change the saturation of each channel, and well, you can see what you can get. Maybe the whole thing here, the vibrance, it's too much. Yeah, and I'm gonna click OK, and this is my final edit. You can see what I did with Camera Raw before and after. Let me take a snapshot and show you the before and after, because we're done. Archer and model, and this is the normal layer, and let me disable the layer mask and take another snapshot. Okay, you can see we went from this to this. I think it's a really nice result. The tutorial was, well, quite long, but anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, just post a comment on my website. And if you upload your images to Instagram, use the hashtag PSDbox. Also on Facebook, the same hashtag PSDbox, so I can see your works, and also to feature your images on my Instagram account. Also, if you want to send me a message or something, you can use WhatsApp. If you're using it, you'll see the number here on the screen. You can send me a WhatsApp and I can answer a lot quicker than via email. So that's all for the first tutorial of 2019. More to come really soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.